Wouldn't it be great if I finally started talking about Jupiter and Gemini? So we're gonna jump right into it with Aries risings. So, Aries risings. Jupiter will be transiting your third house of communication and immediate surroundings. During this time, you're gonna learn a lot of new facts about your immediate environment, but this also comes at a price. The price being either a lack of understanding or conflicts regarding your ninth and your 12th house. This includes your worldviews. This includes other people's culture. This includes religious things, all manner of things that amount to a bigger picture that the individual facts alone can't really provide you with great clarity. It's your responsibility to take all of the facts as you see them and put them together to form your worldview. This can also mean hidden enemies. This can also mean issues with one's own mental health or mental chores. It can mean a time where you feel like more anxious, where certain things you feel like, well, I can't see these things working out. The facts don't tell me that they're going to work out. So I don't really have the faith that they're going to work out. And you have to remember that this all too shall pass. And another thing to remember, watch your mouth. You might want to communicate with a lot of people about a lot of things, but it is very easy at this time for all of us to not understand the importance of context. And trust me when I say context is nearly everything. Just because something that you are saying or thinking might be right doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right time to say it or that it will accomplish the intended goal. With that in mind, we're going to go ahead and move on to Taurus. All right, Taurus risings. This transit is going to be taking place in your second house, and it's going to affect your 8th and 11th. So you might be learning a lot of new facts about your material possessions or about what you value materially speaking. It might be a time where, for example, for your job, you may have to receive new or additional training to supplement your already existing training. It can mean that you're taking a good look at your funds, your finances, and you're seeing where money is coming in and where money is coming out. But the challenge here is that with your 8th house now in detriment, the ruler of your 8th house in detriment by transit, and the same for your 11th house, that can create potential issues regarding debts. Remember, the 8th house is the house of other people's money, and it is the house of gains and losses through other people's actions as well. Because that's why the 8th house is such a taboo house, because it's a house that can affect you directly, but you have very limited power over what happens there. So you can be at the mercy of other people, and other people's mercy may not be so merciful at all. And you may be inclined to tell people things about yourself that relate to your value or your wealth. Like, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if some Taurus risings got robbed at this time because of this. Like, you may have spilt the beans too much to somebody who has been trying to figure out how they can use certain things against you, especially if it's somebody who, I'm sorry, there's a fly in the air and I'm trying to get rid of it. Especially if it's somebody who is a friend, like they've known you for long enough and they're trying to gather information about what it is that you possess. Also, with the 11th house ruler in detriment, you may find that You talk and or think and or plan a lot about certain goals, or you may gather certain facts about achieving certain goals in your life, but you're not really sure how all of these facts fit together. Don't despair, because as I mentioned, this isn't going to go on forever. This is a learning stage. This is a planning stage that we're in right now. When Jupiter comes back to Sagittarius, or perhaps even when Jupiter enters Cancer, you will find an uptick in these particular spaces. But for right now, just like I mentioned to everybody else, loose lips sink ships. With that in mind, Gemini risings. Gemini rising, check it out. This transit is taking place in your first house, and it rules your 7th and your 10th. This is going to be a magnificent time for learning. This is a glow up for you. Now, you're also going to be a little bit more chatty at this time. It's also a good time to work, excuse me. It's also a good time to work on your style and your appearance. Now, the challenge with that is that with this ruling your 7th house and your 10th house, there can be enemies in the workplace, somebody who is offended by something that you said, or somebody who finds that you're a little bit too loquacious, right? Relationships can potentially suffer at this time because you might be developing a lot of facts about yourself, and it might just be a time to focus on yourself, which reduces your ability to focus on relationships and other people. As far as your public image goes, you might find that you wish to broadcast certain messages more, but unless you can back up those messages, unless you can follow up those messages with certain actions, now may not be the time to do that. You might also be learning more by virtue of learning more about yourself. You're learning about your career paths as well, the potential career paths that you can take, planning on them, not necessarily acting. Now, Cancer rising. Cancer rising, this Jupiter is transiting in your 12th house, and it's going to rule your 6th and your 9th. Also, please excuse me, I did not even realize that I didn't have the chart up. Give me a moment. All right, Cancer risings. This is going to take place in your 12th house, and it rules your 6th and your 9th. So, with Jupiter in the 12th, a lot of planets that are in the 12th feel like they are lost or suppressed, or for any reason, they are not readily apparent. So with Jupiter in detriment and in this 12th house, you can feel a sense of hopelessness. You can feel like nothing's ever going to work out. You can feel like you're in a liminal space, really, like you're lost at an abandoned mall or something like that, and you don't know what's in there. And I have such tremendous sympathy for you all that might be experiencing that, because I understand what it's like when you feel like there's certain things that you desire, simple, reasonable things, and it feels like there's just no way forward because you at least don't see a pathway forward. And with Jupiter in Gemini, you're not trying to move by faith at this time. And as I tell everybody else, this too shall pass, and you should take this time and make the advantages of it that you can. And one such advantage that you can take is use this time in solitude to do something like read a book, for example. Gather some facts in the background. You're thinking about your body, your physical health, and the physical maladies that you're experiencing. And you're also thinking about perhaps just trying to get far away from where you are, but you feel like you can't get there yet. And ultimately, you have two options here. You can either sit there in lamentation of your situation, or you can use this time away from other people, this time of being unseen, unheard, unrecognized, all of that, to read up and study up about what it is that you want to do. Now, with your sixth house ruler and ninth house ruler in detriment, you have to be careful about who you discuss your worldviews with. You could have problems with coworkers at this time. A pet might be sick with some respiratory issue, for example. I think Virgo is more associable with blood issues, but Gemini definitely with like upper respiratory issues, or their paws, or, you know, eyes, nose, something up in this general area. And you can also feel like it's difficult to discuss your worldviews with other people, or that you can be experiencing a lot of pushback, which is why I say lay low now, plan ahead when Jupiter is in a more favorable position, which might be sooner than you think. You can turn around and you can use that to Leo risings. Leo risings, this energy is going to take place in your This is going to be taking place in your 11th house, this transit is. And it's going to rule your 5th and your 8th. We know that the 5th is the house of the pleasures of the flesh. We know that it's the house of children, recreation, and reproduction. It is a house of significant physical pleasures. And so with Jupiter and Gemini in your 11th, ruling the 5th and the 8th, you might be experiencing fertility issues if you are trying to have a child, for example. Or you might have a child that's really talkative and just refuses to stop. Or you might have, for example, an autistic child who is good at gathering facts, but is bad at understanding the common sense of the facts. Like he has, or she, or however, has, they have what's called great book knowledge, but lacking in common sense. Be aware of that. Now is not the good time to be making any brand new investments. Your investment portfolio might take a hit at this time. There can be unexpected expenses out of nowhere because of other people's actions. And you might learn quite a bit at this time. You see Jupiter, you see the 11th house is Jupiter's planetary joy in traditional astrology. So Jupiter enjoys being there in the 11th house because the 11th house is a house that generally supports one's goals, and Jupiter is generally a supportive individual. But with Jupiter in Gemini, the way Jupiter is going to support your goals is by encouraging you to learn new things. You may not necessarily feel equipped to try new things, but you will certainly feel equipped to learn them. Just keep all of this in mind. Everybody else, this too shall pass. All right, Virgo risings. Virgo risings. This is going to take place in 10th house. So very outspoken, very communicative individual, probably nice, useful facts, random facts that you might share with people. You might find that you want to share so many different things through verbal communication with people. Now, if you have a housemate or a partner, this might be troublesome. They might find you too talkative, for example. you might find that there's extra work that you have to do to get your house in order. You might find that some problems in your house have created this divide and conquer situation. Like, what if your foundation of your house cracks and your roof is leaking at the same time? It's like, oh, I have two problems to deal with now, but I have to prioritize which one's more important. Do I take care of the foundation? Do I take care of the roof? Same thing with your one-on-one relationships. You might have two people, for example, who they themselves don't see eye to eye with each other, but you end up getting caught in the middle and having to sort of juggle these people. And as far as your public reputation goes, this is a good time to learn and study about public speaking, or about how to get across your point in a way that is palatable to your audience. That's what I have for you, Virgo risings. With that said, we're going to move on to Libra risings. Libra risings. Hello, fellow Libra risings. I gotta admit, just a teeny weeny bit of bias here since this is my rising sign, but just only a little bit. Jupiter is going to be transiting your 9th house, and it's going to rule your 3rd and your 6th. So, like I said before, be very careful. I said this to Aries rising too. Be very careful about what you say, because with your 3rd house being ruled by Jupiter in detriment, you might say something and not realize how it can be interpreted in an unfavorable context or an unfavorable way. You may also have trouble thinking at this time because you can see the individual facts of whatever needs to happen or whatever is going on in your mind, but it can be hard to synthesize those facts to make them all make sense all together. And with that 6th house there, you might find that your immune system is a little bit on the weaker side than you expected it to be for the time being. Like, I know that we are in a transitional season of sorts as Gemini. So that can indicate seasonal allergies. It can indicate respiratory infections, issues with the eyes or the nose or the lungs, places like that. And it can indicate hidden enemies, especially in high places with the 9th house, because the 9th house is what? Colleges and foreign cultures and places of religion, right? And so with Jupiter in Gemini in the 9th house, you might find that you are learning about higher learning, about worldviews, about religious matters or other people's culture, but you may also not feel married to any of those things, not committed to them. You might feel like you're dabbling, as it were. And in this dabbling process, you may learn new things, but like I said, not necessarily be committed to them. Let's go to Scorpio rising. All right, Scorpio rising. So this is going to take place in your 8th house. 8th house. Ooh. Jupiter in Gemini in 8th house. That's an interesting time to learn certain things about the occult. Not necessarily practically apply them, but it is an interesting time to learn things about the occult. It can also be a time where your expenses increase, where everybody else is making pay money for certain things. Give me just a second. All right. Yeah. It's a valuable time to learn about how other people may take advantage of or deprive you of certain things. Like you're learning about other people's power over you. You're learning about death, sex, and taxes. Now, you may not be able to fully synthesize how all of these things work together in the grand scheme of things at this time, but you will definitely be learning valuable information that I highly encourage you to keep in your back pocket. Now, with the Lord of your second and fifth going into detriment, you have to be careful about sexual matters and money matters at this time, because Jupiter isn't going to be able to provide the same faith-based big picture outlook on these environments that it used to. You might be feeling anxiety about your sex. You might be feeling anxiety about your socioeconomic position in the world. You might be feeling like certain pleasures that you used to partake in don't quite do it for you anymore. But again, they will pass. And one of the beautiful things about where Jupiter is right now is that it's only going to be a year. And then once that year is over, it goes into Cancer, which is a very good place, both for you and for Jupiter in general. Just keep your eye out. So with that said, let me bring that up. And it disappeared on me. Sagittarius risings at this time, you're going to be a lot more communicative among your one-on-one relationships. This transit is taking place in your seventh house, and it rules your first and fourth. This can indicate that you feel less self-contained at this time, or that you are less about yourself or able to represent yourself. Like you're curious about other people to such an extent that you yourself might forget certain parts of yourself, or lose certain parts, or feel like certain parts are being called into question by other people, that you're experiencing like verbal criticism from people. You might be flirting with a lot of different folks, but that flirtation might not lead to anything deep. It might just be a friends with benefits type situation with a whole bunch of different people. You might have a revolving door in your home, so to speak. You got to be be careful about that. As I mentioned to, I believe, Virgo rising as well, with fourth house issues going on. Like be careful of multiple issues arising at once in the home, with like the foundation versus the roof. Now, one thing that I will say that I didn't say at the start of this video is that while Mercury is in Cancer, Jupiter will be receiving exaltation from Mercury, which will save it from its debility. But Mercury isn't going to stay in Cancer forever. So even if what I'm saying doesn't happen right now, just be on the lookout for it later, and take this time to make use of the temporary reprieve we have with Jupiter in Gemini. And don't let people ding your self-confidence. Don't let external validation be so important to you that you lose sight of yourself. All right. I'll go to Capricorn rising. Capricorn rising. How are you doing? Capricorn risings, this is going to take place in your sixth house, is where this is going. Yep, that is indeed your sixth house, isn't it? So with Jupiter and Gemini in your sixth house and ruling over your 12th and your 3rd, don't end up becoming a hypochondriac, so to speak. Like, don't end up becoming a hypochondriac. You might learn a whole bunch of new things about certain illnesses You might experience certain illnesses like with your throat or whatnot, or perhaps Jupiter will actually protect your throat. But you have to be very careful about your coworkers in the office as well, because Jupiter in Gemini encourages chattiness, right? You have to be careful about being chatty in those areas, since, you know, it's ruling your 12th and your third. So for Capricorn risings, you you might be out of place. Like you may be in a new environment where you're out of place, and being out of place leads to mental anxieties or physical issues, especially if you are having concerns about something and you're not really seeing a favorable conclusion arising as a result of the facts given. So this is a great time to do some deep breath meditation exercises with that Jupiter and Gemini in sixth. You might end up getting a job that requires you to speak, like a call center job or something like that. You just have to be careful about these cadent areas in your chart, the parts of our chart that are about learning and transitioning and breaking down certain things so that we can transition into new or different sectors of our lives. Like I said, Mercury is in Cancer right now, so Jupiter's receiving exaltation, saving it from debility. But just take this momentary reprieve to get a grip of yourself on a mental and physical level. Now, let's talk about Aquarius risings. Aquarius risings. Aquarius risings. This is going to be taking place in your fifth house, and it's going to rule your second and your 11th. This is very similar to, what sign was it that this was similar to? I think, I want to say Leo rising, but no, this is similar to Taurus rising. Taurus rising. Okay, so yeah, like Taurus risings, you have to be careful about your finances at this time, and you have to be careful about your friend groups. Now is not necessarily the time to be talking with other people about your money. And now may not necessarily be the time to be talking with other people about your goals. Or at least if you do talk about them, you will find delays in acting upon them. Now, with Jupiter and Gemini in your fifth, that is going to confer you the gift of gab. You are going to be able to use your words to entice people to certain physical activity, or at least you're going to be learning how to do it better. It's going to be a refinement process, and you might find that you even pick up some light company off of all this. If you do, I wish you the best. But yeah, just like I said with Taurus rising, mind your money, mind your friend groups. You never know who might be talking about you behind your back, and you never know who you might get into it with because you said certain things. Pretty straightforward there, so let's go straight to Pisces risings. All right. It overshot it. Back up. Okay. So, Pisces rising. This is going to take place in your fourth house. Jupiter and Gemini in fourth house. This might be a loud, noisy, or chatty time, private, or among your family members, and you may feel less like communicating with the outside world. And this, especially since this is taking place in your fourth house and ruling your first house and your 10th. For one way or another, you may communicate certain things to the public, but you may not act on them. And if you speak out to the general public, you may find that the response is ill received. You might find that now is a good time to learn and study quietly, which might make you seem more meek or introverted than usual, especially since it's affecting your first house. It might make you seem less outspoken at work or in your career path, since that affects your 10th house. But remember what I said at the start of the video. Gemini is all about learning the facts, and Jupiter in Gemini is not about applying the facts in an appropriate context. Just because tomato is a fruit doesn't mean it belongs in the fruit salad. You know what I'm saying? Watch out about that home life. Watch out about the immovable possessions, and watch out about how you present yourself to the general public. All right, thank you all so much for watching. If you want me to take a look at how this is going to affect you explicitly, if you want a more explicit, a more in-depth look at how this Jupiter in Gemini experience is going to affect you, please, by all means, come get a consultation with me. They're actually on sale right now, all the way through to the start of next week, the 24th. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I wish you all the best.